You know, for decades, one name has pretty much been the personal computer for billions of us, Windows. It's the OS that literally took us from typing these weird cryptic commands to just clicking on stuff. So how did it go from this basic graphical shell to the absolute powerhouse it is today? Well, let's dive in and trace that incredible journey. Okay, so to really get the Windows revolution, you gotta look at what came before. I'm talking about MS-DOS. Picture this. Just a black screen, and you had to know exactly what to type for every single thing. No pictures, no mouse, nothing. Then Windows 1.0 shows up with this incredible promise, a visual world full of icons you could just click. That right there, that was the big shift, making the computer learn our language instead of us having to learn its.
So here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the first window, where it all began. Then we'll jump into the 32-bit revolution, which is when things got really big. And finally, we'll look at the modern generations.
All right, let's jump right into part one, the first window. This is really where Microsoft took its first huge swing at changing personal computing forever. We're talking about that monumental move from commands to clicks. So what was the magic behind it all? It was this thing called a graphical user interface, or GUI. The idea itself is actually pretty simple, but man, the impact was huge. Think about it. Instead of typing a command like run program, you could just find a little picture of it and double-click. That was it. This whole new visual language, with windows and icons and menus, that was the key. That's what made computers for everybody, not just for the experts.
But this didn't just happen overnight. It was a slow burn, a steady process of trying things out. Windows 1.0 in '85 was really just the first baby step. But with every new version, all the way up to Windows 3.1 in 1992, the idea got better, more people started using it, and it really set the stage for everything that was about to happen.
So, what were those big steps forward? Well, Windows 1.0, it was basically just a pretty face slapped on top of old-school MS-DOS. But then with version 2.0, things got interesting. We got overlapping windows, a huge deal at the time, and the control panel, which gave you way more power. Windows 3.0 got better at doing multiple things at once, and by the time 3.1 came around, it was polished enough that it really took off. That right there, that was the foundation. Okay, so all that early work, it set the stage perfectly for our second act, the 32-bit revolution. And this, my friends, is when Windows didn't just evolve, it absolutely exploded. It became a cultural phenomenon, the undisputed king of the desktop. Man, this timeline is just pure nostalgia for a lot of us, right? It all kicks off with that massive, massive leap forward that was Windows 95. Then we got the more internet-savvy Windows 98. And remember 2000? Microsoft kind of split things up. You had the super stable Windows 2000 for business, and then, well, there was the Millennium Edition for the rest of us. But it all led up to 2001 and the arrival of an absolute legend, Windows XP. Seriously, we have to stop and talk about Windows 95 for a second. It was a total game changer. It gave us two things that are still fundamental to Windows today, the Start menu and the taskbar. Can you even imagine Windows without them? But the really big deal was under the hood. The switch to a 32-bit system was massive. It meant the OS could chew through more data, making everything way faster and more powerful. Windows 95 basically drew the blueprint for the desktop we still use. And then came 2001. And with it came what so many people still call the greatest version of Windows ever, Windows XP. It was a masterpiece. It was so successful it stuck around forever. And why? Because it just worked. It was super stable, it was friendly to use, and here's the brilliant part. It finally brought the consumer and business versions together. It created one solid, reliable platform for absolutely everyone. So what was the secret sauce for XP's stability? It was something called the NT-based architecture. Think of it like the foundation of a house. This was a super strong, secure, professional-grade foundation that was usually only for the serious business versions like Windows 2000. By building XP on top of it for all of us, Microsoft basically set a new gold standard for reliability. A standard, by the way, that's still the foundation for every version of Windows we use today. And that brings us to our third and final act, the modern generations, because suddenly the world was changing, fast.
We had the internet everywhere, we had smartphones, we had touch screens, and Windows had to figure out how to reinvent itself to keep up. And boy, this was a whirlwind. We got release after release, one right after another. Vista came out in 2006 with that flashy, glossy arrow look. Then the much loved Windows 7 came along and basically perfected it. And then Windows 8, a totally radical, touch-focused gamble. That was followed by Windows 10, which tried to fix things, and now we're on the redesigned Windows 11. It was just an era of huge risks and nonstop change. Which brings us to the elephant in the room for this modern era, right? Windows 8. What do we make of it? Was it this bold leap into the future of touchscreens? Or was it just a huge mistake that pushed away millions of people by getting rid of the stuff they knew and loved? So in 2012, Microsoft went all in. They bet the farm on this radical touch-first interface with Windows 8. But the pushback from users was loud. So loud, in fact, that just 1 year later, they rushed out Windows 8.1. And what was the big headline feature? They brought back the Start button. It was a pretty clear sign that, yeah, okay, they were listening. So really, the whole journey to where we are today has been about finding that perfect balance. You know? After everyone fell in love with the polished feel of Windows 7, Microsoft had to fix things. And they did a pretty smart job with Windows 10, which kind of merged the comfort of Windows 7 with some of the new ideas from 8. It also started this new thing of constant updates, a path we're still on with the totally redesigned look of Windows 11. So when you look back at this whole journey, one theme just screams out at you, right? Constant evolution. For almost 40 years, Windows has been the face of the personal computer. It's taken us all the way from the command line to the cloud. So that leaves us with one last really fascinating question to think about. What is going to define the next 40 years?